Welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us today. I'm the host of the Deep Dive series, Doug Denny, and we're here to talk about Rackspace's recent HITRUST certification and our new capabilities when it comes to supporting healthcare use cases and workloads. In each deep dive session, like always, we talk about real-world topics geared for practitioners that involve things like reference architectures or reports or white papers that are derivative of the work that we do each and every day here at Rackspace for our customers. And like all deep dives, we give viewers the opportunity to download the assets that we're talking about in real time, so you can follow along as me and our guests talk about the contents of those assets. So all of these assets for current and previous shows can be found at rackspace.com/deepdive. And finally, if you have questions, you can reach out to us using Twitter and talk to us at Rackspace, and our social media team will make sure that your questions are routed to us and we'll respond to you accordingly. So with that intro out of the way, I want to introduce our guest today. This is Claudia Castellanos. Tell us a bit about what you do for Rackspace, Claudia.
Hey Doug, great to see you again.
Good to see you too.
So at Rackspace, I run our Northeast Solution Engineering team.
Okay.
And that's our pre-sales solution architects that are dedicated to the enterprise. So by enterprise, I mean Rackspace's largest customers in my region, from Maine down to Washington, D.C., and mostly focused on Boston Metro and New York Metro. And those customers have the most mission-critical workloads that we support and the most complex environments, typically. And prior to joining Rackspace, where we worked in a past life together, which is great to work with you again, I also held a technical pre-sales leadership role, but dedicated to the healthcare vertical. And in that vertical, I lived and breathed the challenges of the healthcare IT executives, only met with those customers, and so I have some deep context and some real-world experience in that space.
Well, it's great to have you, and as I always love, anyone who watches the Deep Dive series knows that I love to bring folks from our SE organization to the show. That's the world I came from before I stumbled into marketing almost by accident. So these always make for great conversations, because you guys are really in the tip of the spear when it comes to helping design solutions for our customers to meet their needs. So.
Excellent, and I'm actually really excited about our commitment to this vertical and what we call our inspiring mission in our team, because this is the only industry we're all going to be consumers of someday.
Right.
So we have a really unique opportunity to help get it right. And I'm very excited about that, because our fanatical support, our solution engineering expertise and our support expertise, industry leading SLAs and uptime and availability, where the rubber meets the road. We've done this before successfully for these customers, and I think we add a lot of value there.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on the show. So real quickly, I'm just going to run through what the viewers can expect today. We're going to discuss the recent Rackspace HITRUST certification. We'll discuss trends and challenges that impact the healthcare industry. We'll discuss common use cases that we see when speaking to customers that work in the healthcare space. And we'll walk through an example reference architecture that dives into one of these healthcare use cases. Does that sound good?
Sounds perfect.
Okay, well, let's do this. Let's kick things off. Let's start with the fundamentals. So what is HITRUST? What does that mean?
So HITRUST, and you've probably also heard terms like HIPAA, high-tech.
Yep.
So if we think of HIPAA as the Healthcare Information Portability and Accountability Act, it kind of defined the provisions for data privacy and security.
Okay.
You can think of high-tech as that standard, the technology standards that really started to get the industry adopting things like electronic health record systems, so the technology framework around that. But HITRUST is actually the implementation, so the how for HIPAA.
Okay.
So HIPAA defined the framework, and HITRUST is really it's an organization in collaboration with technology, with security leaders, healthcare of course, and it established that CSF, the Common Security Framework, that helps design and manage basically protected health information, what's considered PHI.
Okay.
And that framework consists of hundreds of different controls based on the best-in-breed frameworks from ISO, PCI, COBIT, and HIPAA as well. And the certification that we recently achieved is basically reviewed annually. So we just achieved it recently, and it'll be reviewed again annually and recertified every 2 years by independent and external auditors, just to ensure that we have the appropriate policies, the processes, and procedures in place.
Okay. And so having this certification, this achievement, is critical really to doing business with healthcare providers, anyone who falls in scope for carrying health-related medical records, data, anything like that. Is that true?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, so why it matters, if that's the question, why?
Yeah.
Closely following the heels of the PCI certification that we just achieved this HITRUST cert, and we're now able to provide healthcare with that control and security framework and the assurance that they need to reduce risk for their business, for their customers, and as they seek additional clients or compliance certification, many of them couldn't even achieve their own HITRUST CSF certification until we completed ours. So Rackspace's certification actually helps mitigate some of that risk and the potential loss for them of their inability to get new business.
Okay, great. That's great. So then when we talk about the healthcare industry specifically, right, like, versus like other customers that we work with that are not in that space, what sort of like trends or unique challenges are they facing right now that separates them from, typical like an e-commerce company?
Right. So I think, if you walk into a healthcare facility, we probably all feel like healthcare has been this technology laggard for a long time. But the fact of the matter is that they're being forced to transform and digitize by federal regulation. So the transformation is being forced upon them. If you can imagine a year from now, if you get a paper prescription from your doctor, they'll probably face a fine for that. Okay. So everything's being digitized. And what's interesting is because they're being forced to digitize and they were historically laggards in adoption of technology or just being risk averse, they have a huge expertise gap as well. We're seeing that with a lot of our customers in the healthcare industry. So they have the leanest IT ratios in the industry. The most efficient folks that you've ever worked with in IT are working in healthcare right now. So again, they're being forced to digitize, but they've standardized because of their validated healthcare software providers, their ISVs or independent software vendors like Epic, Cerner, McKesson, Dragon for dictation, Imprivata for two-factor authentication. Right. Those are some of the vendors that they trust and have trusted for years, and they've validated their software solutions on platforms like VMware, Microsoft, Citrix. So you see a lot in the healthcare industry, those platforms, which is great because that's our bread and butter sweet spot of expertise. Because they're adopting these EHR platforms, electronic health records, because of HIPAA high tech, they have this need for disaster recovery and 100% uptime and availability. Not just because if it's your family on the operating table, you'd want the lights not to go out, right? So there's that, the patient outcomes aspect of 100% uptime. But they're being dictated by their EHR vendors to have a requirement for DR as well. And federal funding, paperwork, anytime they have an outage, they have to fill out a lot of paperwork. So there's a lot of personal value in 100% uptime as well. Also, the trend in healthcare is the hospital, so there's something called the Accountable Care Act. So previously it was all fee for service. So if you have allergies and you go see 3 allergists, you receive a diagnostic test, they all get paid. In the future, it's going to be accountable care, outcome-based reimbursement. So the trend around digitizing all of the data is to be able to put analytics, so big data is kind of a phase 2 that they're all considering. Put analytics around all this data we have around patient health and population health management around diabetes, the biggest conditions, so that we can treat people right the first time and not spend 23% of our GDP on healthcare and reduce the cost so it doesn't bankrupt the future of our nation. So the Accountable Care Act is a really important trend in healthcare because their costs are going up, the reimbursements are going down, they're doing more with less. And so that's key. So because it's going to that outcome-based reimbursement, outcome-based healthcare, the hospital, which was traditionally you wanted to fill the hospitals, now it's just kind of for acute conditions, like you have a heart attack, need an operation, but then they're going to send everyone home. So the care is moving to the edge, so to speak, and so mobility is also huge in healthcare because they're all at the edge, mobile device management, iPads, and things like that, and for home health care, for nursing and things like that. So being forced to digitize, huge talent gap. Engineering and operations are not always separate because they have those lean IT ratios, lots of people doing a lot of work. They have a problem around shelfware. They've standardized on Microsoft, VMware, Citrix, but they don't have the expertise or the time, so they've bought all this expensive software and they're not always getting maximum value.
Sitting on the balance sheet, not creating any value. That makes sense.
And again, the final trend, which obviously the HITRUST certification was a big deal for us because of that, security and compliance. That's really critical to safeguarding patient information and data privacy. But at the same time, you'll see massive consolidation in the healthcare industry. There used to be 5,000 healthcare providers. Now there's about 500. In 5 years, there will be 50. So security and compliance is also a matter of brand protection.
Okay.
So you want to make sure people trust you, because otherwise they can go across the street and get their healthcare somewhere else.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, that's there's a lot going on in healthcare then.
Yeah.
It's a fast-moving space, lots of complexity. And then what I'd like to talk about then is how Rackspace helps address some of these challenges.
Yep. So as I mentioned, I'm really excited about our commitment to this vertical, because we can absolutely help customers get it right. So we've done this before for many customers, and I'll walk through some of the minor details of the reference architecture, an actual Rackspace customer in the healthcare space.
Okay.
But our economies of skill, our ability to have expertise 24/7, 365 around all of these areas that healthcare most cares about, that is a huge value to healthcare. Our SLAs and our operational ongoing support that they don't have to worry about, they can just focus on their business of patient outcomes, patient experience, population health management. Also, our HITRUST certification and our commitment to security extends beyond our platform security and compliance. We also have something called Rackspace Managed Security. There's a lot of value, and I encourage folks to deep dive into that solution, because it's one of the only managed security offerings in the industry that can actually provide protection against what's known as active persistent threats.
Right.
So most managed security providers will detect something, but they don't actually have access because they don't manage the infrastructure and the workloads like we do for our customers. So we have the access, and we have predefined runbooks, permission from customers. When we see an active persistent threat, we will actually be able to mitigate and remediate in real time. So that is a huge value. There's zero trust model, especially in healthcare. Just assume they breached.
That's a good one to bring up too, because we've got 4 or 5 different deep dives to go into all different dimensions of that offering, and talk about the types of people that staff that group, right? And it's pretty impressive. So if you're viewing this and security is of significant interest to you, then by all means do go back to the deep dive page and find those and check them out.
Excellent. So yes, bulletproof IT. That is how we can help.
Right on. Awesome. That's compelling. So let's then click one layer deeper, right? So we have a use case we want to talk about. The reference architecture is representative of this use case. So if you haven't filled out the form and downloaded it, you should do that right now, and then come back and hit play, and we're going to talk about that here. So tell me a bit about what this use case is and what the reference architecture we're talking through represents.
So it is a very large strategic vendor in the healthcare space, based out of our region in the Northeast.
Okay.
And if customers in healthcare are familiar with HIMSS, which is the Healthcare Information Management Society, there's a large annual conference every year that just took place in February in Orlando. They know this vendor's name, so they've attended that conference. They're very familiar with them. It's a VMware-based solution, a dedicated infrastructure just for them, for this customer, and again, hosting their mission-critical workloads. Databases like Oracle and SQL, hundreds of instances of those. Disaster recovery is built in as well, so that resilient, always-on architecture. So enterprise class storage on the back end. And we also support their app dev and their DevOps solutions and their support, because they also have a huge software development arm. So obviously security is huge for them. They discussed with us the fact that their customers really needed this HITRUST certification, so they were actually one of the customers that we listened to pursue this certification ourselves. It's exciting to have partnered with them. And again, security solutions like Rackspace Managed Security on top of the HITRUST validated platform underneath, and things like Akamai, which is an enterprise class web application firewall to front end for additional risk mitigation.
Okay, very cool. This is the part where I would say if you digest this architecture and you have any deeper questions about how the choices made in that design map back to the trends and the challenges we talked about in healthcare earlier, that's a great opportunity to reach out to Rackspace any way that you choose. You can do it by Twitter, or you can call in, and we can explain a lot of those details readily with an SE or a member of Claudia's team. So please feel free to do so. We encourage viewers to make that move if you want to have a deeper conversation with us. I want to talk about, summarize the key takeaways that we covered today. If there were one or two things or more that you wanted the viewers to leave with, what might those be?
Yep, so I just wanted to leave everyone with the thought that healthcare, just like every other industry, is under massive transformation. And in addition to our experience with transformative workloads and environments with our customers, like I said, our largest, most complex environments and mission critical workloads, we're not experimenting with our customers.
Right.
So we have use cases and experience around this. We can provide healthcare with the 100% uptime that they need. We're absolutely the best partner to have in the boardroom to consider going forward. So economies of skill, SLAs, 24/7, 365 support, security and compliance certifications, and we have a history of iterating in the direction of our customers' greatest needs.
Yeah.
So as we partner more and more with our healthcare customers, we'll continue to adapt and listen and provide what they require.
Awesome, very good. Well, next steps, what should viewers do if they want to learn more?
Viewers should absolutely visit rackspace.com/healthcare, and on that page they can find a lot of healthcare specific resources, videos, and also a copy of our HITRUST certification letter. So a lot of real goodness around our expertise in the vertical.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us today. And thanks to our viewers for taking the time out of your day to watch and listen along and download the reference architecture. Please, as always, visit our other deep dive series episodes at rackspace.com/deep dive, and feel free to engage with us socially to let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, and what you want to see next time. Thank you so much. We'll see you again soon.